Hello, and welcome to this 171st episode of Old Romans Unscripted with me, your host, Archbishop Jerome, and joined today by Father Gerke, Father Tom, who is
Hello.
Escanaba.
Yes.
How are you, Father?
Hello, Your Grace. I'm doing well. My allergies are a little agitated today. I've been doing some work outside and cleaning and all that stuff inside the house and outside, dust, and, all that fun stuff. So I do apologize. I'll try to mute myself if I need to, if my nose starts acting up. But other than that, great. It's wonderful to be up here in God's country. So definitely much needed getaway from Chicago.
Excellent. Well, we are going to discuss today World Youth Day 2023, which occurred, I think, was it last weekend? I think it was last weekend. And a number of things that were, let's say, rather concerning. Now, the Latin motto for today's show is Corruptio optima pessima. Corruptio optima pessima, meaning the corruption of the best is the worst. And I've chosen that motto to describe today's discussion because what was clear from various interviews that I watched of young participants at World Youth Day was that several of them, or most of them, I would say, were genuine and sincere in their love of Jesus Christ, in their piety, in their devotion, in their spirituality, and in their desire to give themselves wholly to the discipleship of Jesus Christ. But sad to say, I don't think that what went on at World Youth Day would have served their precious and genuine, sincere sentiments. There are a number of things that occurred that are really quite concerning and rather endemic to the crisis persisting in the church. And one of those, for example, so I'll do these one by one, I think. But one of the first things that was commented upon was at the opening mass and the distribution of the Holy Communion, where, despite having several hundreds of concelebrating priests and bishops, the Eucharist was distributed by lay people, and not only by lay people, but not even in receptacles worthy of the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord and Savior. They were using bowls that were covered with plastic cellophane, and scandalous pictures of these receptacles appeared on social media, together with concelebrating priests queuing up amongst the lay people to receive the Eucharist in the hand from lay people. Now, let's be clear that even in the new rite of ordination, the hands of the priests are consecrated. They're consecrated. Their holy oil is used by the bishop, and he traces the sign of the cross over the palms of the hands, joins the hands together, ties them with a cloth known as the manutergium, which traditionally is then presented to the mothers of priests. The first stole worn for the first that the new priest hears is traditionally given to the father. But the manutergium, that precious moment of anointing, that souvenir of that precious moment of anointing, is given to the mother, and customarily is placed in the mother's coffin at her passing, so that should anyone in the future wish to exhume, they will know that this woman was the mother of Christ, because of the manutergium that they will find with her remains. Now, the priest's hands are consecrated for a reason, of course. They're consecrated because the priest confects the Holy Eucharist. But not only that, more traditionally, and according to ancient rubrics and customs associated with the Latin rite, only consecrated hands are strictly permitted to touch consecrated things, so that in the traditional rite, only priests can touch the sacred vessels. For example, the chalice or the paten or the ciborium, which are consecrated by a bishop. So the course then was rather scandalous for traditional Catholics to see priests whose hands have been consecrated purposefully to hold the Eucharist being given in the hand Holy Communion from lay people. Father Thomas, what was your reaction?
I wasn't surprised at all, really. I mean, what do we expect? I mean, I would have been more shocked if they had ciboriums and if those conciliating priests actually, distributed Holy Communion. What would have been more interesting, and I'm surprised they didn't go with this route. I'm really shocked because they could have taken a page right out of COVID, and our Protestant brethren, they have individual communion cups you can buy at religious stores. Like they're individual communions. They come with a little bit of wine and a little host. Why didn't you just get those? And then, everybody in their mode of priest concelebrating, raise up your little communion cup to the closest priest near you as he's concelebrating the mass, and it gets consecrated. And then you can just commune yourself. Why couldn't they just do that? I mean, that would have been less scandalous than probably what they did do. Now, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud here. What do I know? But it's devastating, the sacrilege that has taken place. And as you pointed out, I mean, it's a sheer miracle that there are young people that still actually desire to be Catholic in the Novice Ordo and that are striving to actually understand their faith. And you talk to them and they're going to a Novice Ordo. They don't go to Latin Mass. They may know about it, but they don't have it available. But they're praying the rosary. They're doing devotions. They're doing novenas. And yet they're going to this watered down, liberal, nonsensical, parish. And I'm like, so the faith is still working. And that's the miracle there, is that God is still able to touch souls and work through souls, even though through all that this modern hierarchy has done to destroy the faith. So, I mean, I'm not shocked. Anything. I mean, like I said, I'd be more shocked if there was actual reverence and sacredness, and if they actually were to be remotely Catholic. But from what I saw from World Youth Day, or when I saw from this whole thing, it was interesting because in Chicago, I think the same weekend, they had the big event in Chicago, Lollapalooza, which is a music fest. And if you see Lollapalooza and you see World Youth Day, there's really not much difference. And it's been compared to the Catholic Woodstock and all that stuff. But I just found it interesting that on the same weekend in Chicago, they had Lollapalooza when the World Youth Day was going on. But yeah, I mean,
what do you think, though, that the effect is of young people experiencing Mass and the distribution of Holy Communion in this way on vocations? And I'm thinking particularly of vocations to the priesthood. It's
devastating. You're equalizing. And if you're equal, it's like, it's socialism in a sense. You're making everything the same. So, when you're given the same that your neighbor's given, then it eliminates the work ethic. It eliminates you to strive to be better. When people say, well, everybody's going to heaven, nobody's going to hell anymore. Well, then why do I need to be a good person? I'm just going to go to heaven. What's the point? Why do I need to work to be a saint if it's already going to be given to me? Why should I become a priest and sacrifice everything in my life when I can still go to heaven and still have a family and a kid and just live a good life and have, earthly world goods?
And
so
still distribute Holy Communion.
Yeah, I mean, you could be Eucharistic minister, and I could be a lector, I could be an acolyte, and pretty soon, heck, I could probably even play dress up too. The way the church is going with this synodal way, it doesn't matter. Holy orders are becoming a mute issue. And I think if you look at the documents of the Pontificale that came out of Vatican II. I mean, you even see right there the watering down of the sacred, the consecrational rite of a bishop is just obliterated. And, you know, you just see that Roman ritual, how it used to be, what, 3-4 volumes? Before Vatican II, it was 3-4 volumes, and then you had your the apostolate ritual that priests carried around that had bare minimum you needed. But like for the parishes, you had 4-volume set Roman ritual. And now you got like a book like this big in novicial sanctuaries. It is just like, what gives? Like, but it is interesting because, again, like I said before, that God still works miracles and the faith is still found. And young people are thirsting and they're understanding that what they have been given right now is not complete. And they're searching for it. And thank God for modern technology. You can go online. You can look up TLF. You can look up the trad podcasts. You can find and get resources available. And more youth, more young people are doing that. So there is hope. There is always hope. I don't want to be all doom and gloom. But I do think that what this current hierarchy is doing, and World Youth Day was a just prime example of it. They're trying to say everybody's equal. There's no good. There's no bad. Everybody's loved. And it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what you are or what you think you are or what you identify as, what pronouns you use. You know, all that matters is you're trying to be good and you're going to go to heaven. Just try to be good. I mean, that's the message of World Youth Day. That's what I got from, you know, the whatever amount of World Youth Day I could tolerate observing.
Yeah. Now, of course, the other scandalous aspect connected again to the Eucharist that sent shockwaves, I would say, around the Catholic internet, were then images of reservation of the Blessed Sacrament. And the issue specifically was, well, let me just show you a couple of photographs. So now within those plastic containers are flat ciboria containing the Blessed Sacrament. And here is another picture of another arrangement of said boxes. This with a seemingly a plant pot stuck on the top. I suppose that's meant to signify the presence. But there was an image which I used for the episode's title, which sums up really what I was saying about the corruption of the genuine piety and sincerity of the youth who were attending World Youth Day. It showed actually particular place for visitation of the Blessed Sacrament, and in front of it were kneeling 3 young people, 2 girls and a lad between them, who were devoutly kneeling toward the sacrament, and clearly praying in adoration. But it was that contrast, that juxtaposition of traditional piety and devotion manifested by these 3 young people, and then the hideous sacrilege of the 3 plastic boxes top of each other with a plant stuck on top, that they were turned toward.
You know, it's just the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the image of the 3 youths kneeling was Fatima. Obviously, being in Portugal, you know, not too far away from Fatima, I was like, immediately, I'm like, there's a Fatima message going on right there. Like, even if the rest of the world doesn't want to give due reverence to God, these three, and I think there was more. I think that, as people discovered that this is where our Lord's being reserved, people were like, what? So they're doing acts of reparations, or doing rosaries, they're getting on their knees, and they're spending time with our Lord suffering. It's like, it's the agony in the garden all over again. It's you're going through our Lord's passion and suffering. And I'm like, it screamed Fatima to me. But then the other thing, and that's why I was kind of laughing in the beginning of this, was when you and I took our trip to the Philippines and we went to that wonderful store. I'm like, all those beautiful tabernacles could have been used for this event. The tabernacle room, I'm like, oh, this would be amazing. Like, the Catholic Church has tabernacles. Yeah. Like, the Catholic Church, you could get temporary set up tabernacles. You could easily have done that. And this is not like this is planned last minute.
Imagine the kudos for any ecclesiastical retailer.
Donate a tabernacle to use for World Youth Day.
The use of World Youth Day, and then when they flog them, to say, "Oh, this was used at World Youth Day." I mean,
yeah, come on, marketing tech. I mean, yeah. I mean, what church wouldn't want to have? Oh, this was used by Pope whatever in World Youth Day year or whatever. Come on, that'd be. But again, I think we're too Catholic, or we're trying to be too common sense. It's not like we don't have the resources. And that was, I think, the biggest shock was everybody knows the Catholic Church is well off. Like, as much as Francis wants to be poor and humble, the Catholic Church is well off. And when they want to do things right, they can do things right.
Well,
like
when you understand, for example, that the total cost for WYD 2023 was 163 million euros. 163 million euros were spent on World Youth Day 2023.
Wasn't that about how much was spent on the flats in London? Sorry.
No, it wasn't. But 163 million euros. And out of that, they couldn't find worthy receptacles for the Blessed Sacrament. At which people were going on the hour, every hour, over the whole weekend to pray. They
couldn't even just have a monstrance set up for, why couldn't they have? Why did they have to have a cactus? Are we going back to Pachamama now with this?
Why did they have 1.5 million hosts even reserved? Why would you need 1.5 million hosts reserved?
Because
people are going to communion every day. There's hardly any need to have reserved hosts in that number, especially if you're if you're going to have dotted places of adoration. You only need 20, 50, or even 100 priest hosts in monstrances.
Yeah,
100 adoration chapels. That's you don't need 1.5 million hosts.
Communion hosts just sitting in a little dish with saran wrap covering them in a Rubbermaid container. I mean, come on.
The thing is, why is it that they had? Because I saw a photograph of the inside of the plastic containers, and sure enough, piled on top of each other in about 3 layers were silver pixies. Or those what do they call those? Open ciboria with a lid.
Oh,
silver ones containing the host. So that the hosts themselves, the sacrament themselves, were contained in a worthy receptacle. But why? I mean, and why weren't these used in the distribution of the Holy Communion instead of the bowls with plastic wrapping?
I mean, it could just be gaslighting. It could just be gaslighting the trads to get us more upraged, and then Francis comes out with the new motu proprio saying anybody that talks bad about World Youth Day 23 is excommunicated. Blah.
Well,
I don't know.
But also, why didn't? Yeah, because this is what it actions speak louder than words,
Right.
and clearly from the organizers of the event, the worthy receptacle for the Blessed Sacrament and for adoration was not of huge importance. It clearly was not of huge importance to them.
Well, it'd be interesting to see who was actually on the planning committee for the World Youth Day. How many clergy, religious priests, bishops, nuns, how many religious were actually part of this planning? Because that would give you right there a good example. Because maybe if it's a lot of lady planning the event, like in general, like the World Youth Day, they just probably assume, oh, well, the clergy are going to take care of mass and religious items, and that's, and if it's no, I'm just trying to be devil's advocate or just thinking out loud, because you got to give every objective stance, right?
Right. Okay. But one of the things we know about these huge events, and the reason why a figure like 163 million euros is being spent is, for example, they always insist on having a matching chasubles for these huge celebrations. I mean, the idea that that the individual priests and bishops could just bring a white chasuble. I mean, how many parishes, don't have a white chasuble? Most have more than one. Most of them of the sort of style that the organisers of WID would appreciate. They could easily bring their own polyester chasuble to wear. But a huge amount of money would have been spent on vestments for that. I know from colleagues in the Philippines, when the Pope visited the Philippines, again, specially commissioned concelebration vestments were ordered. And of course, these things aren't cheap. I mean, although they look cheap, even though quality speaking, they are cheap. You and I know if you go to an ecclesiastical retailer to buy one of these wonders, they're not cheap. Even it may only be polyester, but it's still 150 euros or dollars or whatever to buy. So, all. No, where was I coming from with that? Oh yes, and likewise too, all those pyxes, the chalices used, probably even the torches and the processional cross that we used, all these would have been specially bought for the event, because that's what they do. All these things would have been specially bought for the event. So why couldn't they have bought something decent for exposition? Why couldn't they have bought something decent for reservation? And indeed, why couldn't they have incorporated in their scaffold structure with blue canvas behind the altar and the stage? Why couldn't they have created a huge temporary tabernacle? To store and have a huge expositionary monstrance. Now, I mean, if
they do exist, you and I have seen one.
If you go to if you go to Seville, I mean, Sevilla has the best one, Seville Cathedral, and there's dates from the 16th century, a wonderful Baroque sunburst ostensorium, which is always on display, mounted on a big, huge blue backcloth to show it off. Now, why couldn't they have created something like that for World Youth Day, so that the sacrament was perpetually available? Indeed, that actually overlooking the whole thing all day, every day, would have been Jesus. Why didn't they do that? And of course, following on from that, No doubt you've seen the videos and heard about the DJ priest.
Yeah.
So now this occurred. This intrigued me because this occurred at sunrise on the Sunday morning before the mass. Instead of a communal celebration of Lauds, from morning prayer or the office of readings, from uh, the liturgy of the hours,
Wow.
instead of a communal celebration of that, um, uh, they had a DJ priest who is
Yep.
Portuguese and who, in his spare time, um, is a commercial DJ.
Yeah.
Uh, and there he was playing his techno dance rave music um, on a desk in front of the altar that's about to be used for mass,
Hmm.
surrounded by concelebrating priests and bishops who are one by one gradually arriving to take their places, fully vested. Um, there he is playing techno rave music.
Yeah. It's great. And he got those headphones that he wore, uh, blessed by the Pope. And the Pope gave him a special benediction with said headphones, just like we had the guitar benediction here in Chicago or down in Chicago. It's just the the sentimental. I got to be careful with words. um, just ugliness of it all. It's like, oh, well, this means something to me, and this inanimate object means so much to me. Or being a DJ, and I think I could be wrong, but I think one interview I saw with that priest, he said he always wanted to be a DJ, but it was like he fell into the priesthood somehow. It wasn't like it was a true vocation, like he had a true calling. His heart was always being a DJ. That's what he always wanted to be, was a professional, world-renowned DJ. But he just kind of fell into the priesthood or something. I don't know. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, mea culpa. But I think one of his interviews I read and glanced this past week mentioned something about that. I could be wrong. But I mean, that's clear. And obviously his actions speak louder, right? He could have celebrated the mass, but there he is DJ instead. So where's his heart? His heart's in the, wiki now, and all that, whatever. I mean, I like techno music. I grew up on techno music. I'm not bashing the music per se. But there's a time and place. And,
our dear friend Robert Kennedy had some observations to make about not just the DJ priest, but also the type of music. Because it's very interesting, actually, because it's right in what he said. There's a reason why one of the drugs of note connected with that sort of music is ecstasy. And the whole idea, the whole concept behind that sort of music is that it's supposed to lift you into a state of transcendence. Hence ecstasy, and the name for the drug that's supposed to aid or magnify your experience of this transcendence because of the music. But it is through the constant repetition of the boom, 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 boom going in the background, etc., that sets off receptors in the brain that induce a kind of trance-like or I don't know, sort of tuning in to the music thing. Now, in a conventional context, so in the context of a rave or a commercial nightclub or whatever, what happens to people, of course, is that they lose all sense and sensibility through this supposed trance-like transcendental state that they experience, and that causes them, of course, to perform all sorts of acts that in their right mind they wouldn't necessarily do, and so it is. I can appreciate why some people, I wouldn't go so far as to call it this, but I can appreciate why some people give demonic connotations to this genre of music and the general way in which it is conventionally experienced because of the effects that are produced, the sin that is committed.
Well, I mean, at the bare minimum, you're putting yourself into a temptation of sin. You're putting yourself into the possibility of sinning, which we shouldn't be doing. Period. So I mean,
that before Mass. I mean, I'm not saying for a minute, and please don't think that I'm not saying for a minute that I think there were young people at WID popping ecstasy pills and all the rest of it during this techno rave music before Mass. But the point is that this music is culturally connected with that whole culture of clubbing and drug taking and promiscuity and so on and so forth.
I could just see the headlines now. Archbishop Jerome Lloyd says kids before Mass were popping ecstasy pills at World Youth Day masses. Headlines. No, I'm kidding. But I mean, still, you're putting yourself in the environment where the body is relaxed. And like you said, when you listen to that type of music or you're around that type of influence of narcotics, drugs, anything like that, you're lessening your sensibilities and you're lessening the ability for reason. And it's important to know that. And, how many of those people that attended that Mass were in the right state of mind to be participating in the Mass after listening to that techno rave DJ priest? That's the thing, because when you get to Mass, you get to the church, you're preparing yourself. You're saying your preparatory prayers, you're going to confession, or you're getting your mind, body, and soul ready for the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And for 2,000 years, the Catholic Church has had a pretty good system of preparing one to enter into the divine mystery of the holy sacrifice. And it's only in the recent part of the church's existence that, man's just muddled that all up. And there is a wonderful transcending aspect that takes place that is a far greater high than any type of drug can give you when you go to the traditional Latin Mass. When you participate and you take in all the smells and the bells, the chants, the Latin, everything. It's just the silence, and then the organ, and just the stained glass windows, or even just whatever windows you have, if any window, just the light, everything, all five senses actively participating in this liturgy. That transcends you right there to a greater high. And I've firsthand experienced it. And there's no drug that could ever be found on this earth or could be created by man that would ever come close to that experience. It's just not going to happen. And it's interesting because you see, it's almost like they're trying to find that drug. Like the modernists are trying to find a drug to replace what they already had pre-council. Like they're trying to fill that void that they just took out. They took out all this, and they're trying to put it in, fill that void they caused with this senseless ideas.
But also, I think the phenomena of trance music and this pursuit of transcendence betrays the fact that actually young people are looking for genuine experiences of the transcendent, of the divine. The fact that it's so predominant in youth culture, I think is actually a symptom or a sign that innately young people are feeling and recognizing the need to be spiritually aware and connected. And And so rather than rather than employ the very thing that otherwise manipulates and distracts them from the divine, like, I'm sure this DJ priest would argue that, oh well, he's appealing to them through what they know or what they're familiar with. Instead, World Youth Day should be a wonderful way of, particularly through the liturgy, of exempling the best practice for right worship. Imagine the atmosphere that could have been engendered by using Gregorian chant at a huge mass like that.
And then, did you see the images of the Eucharistic Eucharistic College or whatever they had in Chicago in the early 1900s, or maybe mid 1900s? It was before the council. It was before Vatican II. There was this huge Eucharistic celebration in Chicago, and they actually made, it was the mass, the big ceremony, the liturgy was Latin, traditional Latin mass, cardinal. I think it was a huge big deal. They built the baldacchino, like that was, they did all out, and there was priest giving Holy Communion to those kneeling, and it was reverent. It was, and there was hundreds of thousands of people present. It was a huge big ordeal, right? So it can be done.
And
it has been done.
Eucharistic congresses were very popular in the early part of the 20th century, and
now they replaced them with World Youth Day.
Yeah, actually, they still do have Eucharistic congresses, believe it or not, but they prefer to hold them in football stadiums and places like that. But
this one was held in a football stadium. It was at Soldier Field before it became what it is now.
Yeah, but it was usual for at these events to have huge baldacchinos built in a raised high altar, and to have them dressed and vested properly. That was de rigueur. And in fact, I remember seeing a photograph from Portugal, and I think this would have been possibly from the 1920s or 1930s. And this was in fact held in a sports field, because it would have to be a massive field. But there were, I think there was something like 20 simultaneous pontifical ordination masses going on at the same time. So there were like 20 altars in a circle, with 20 bishops, and umpteen ordinandi, celebrating a pontifical low mass at each altar and ordaining sacred ministers. And I'm pretty sure that was from Portugal. There's huge evidence that the church was more than alive before Vatican II. More than alive before Vatican II. One only has to look at the biographies, etc., of Archbishop Lefebvre, and to see, what he achieved in West Africa.
Mm-hmm.
It's the teams of people being confirmed, of young men being ordained, of seminaries being built, churches being built and consecrated, and everywhere in Latin. Didn't matter whether you were, if you were in the Congo, or if you were in Brussels, or if you were in Chicago, or in San Salvador. The mass was the mass, and everywhere people behaved in the same way, with due reverence toward the Blessed Sacrament. People always genuflected coming in and out of their pew. And in fact, one of the things that had to be people had to be corrected about after Vatican II, when the Blessed Sacrament had been, in most places, moved from the high altar, high chapel, was people being told, you shouldn't genuflect when you get in and out of the pew anymore, because the sacrament isn't there.
It's like, you can't. And I mean, obviously, I mean, even us in a traditional right, I think that only happens about Holy Week is when we have those couple days where the Blessed Sacrament's not in the tabernacle, and you find yourself going into the oratory or chapel, and you know, out of habit, you catch yourself genuflecting. Oh wait, sorry, and you give a reverent bow instead. I mean, yeah. So, but it's one of those things where you're like, what is going on? Like, you know, it's just, you know, not to digress, but just really quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't share this. Last night, I was out with my mom having a lovely dinner, and there was live entertainment at the restaurant afterwards, and we stayed for a little bit, and enjoying cocktails. And this young woman, not much younger than me, actually, I was in my habit, and she saw me, and she came up and she started talking to me, and she was curious. She's like, why is there so much hatred towards the Latin Mass? Why do they just want to get rid of it? Why is there just so much? Why are they trying to destroy this? Because I told her, I'm like, you know, pre-55, we're, you know, traditional Franciscans and all that. And she's like, oh, that's awesome. That's wonderful. Like, are you starting a mission up here? Like, she was like so excited. She's like, are there going to be traditional Franciscans in the UP? And I'm like, I mean, who knows? Maybe. But it's just, people are seeing that. They're seeing this attack on tradition. And it's almost like it's driving the young people. It's like when you tell a kid, right, you can't do that. What's the kid going to do? He's going to go do it. He's going to go see what's going on. Well, you're telling me I can't do this. It must be something really good. So let me go find out. And so, and you see that, that's what they're doing. That's what these younger generations are doing. This Pope and the hierarchy are telling them, you can't go to the traditional Mass. You can't have this. And so they're sneaking away to the SSPX chapels or the independent chapels or whatever, or us. They're finding Latin Masses and they're like, oh, what's going on? Let's see what all the hustle and bustle is about.
I mean, one of the things I registered recently for the annual conference here of the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Child, and in the conference itinerary, every day 7:15 traditional Latin Mass. So, you know, which I was rather surprised at, because, you know, this is ostensibly a Novus Ordo organization, but yeah, traditional Latin Mass advertised every morning, and not with a alternative.
Right.
So, yeah, yeah, we're living, as they say, in interesting times, to quote the Chinese proverb.
Yes.
But yeah, there is, and again, so going back to you know, so the general point of the discussion, you know, our young people, clearly, both those within and those without the church, appear to be genuinely seeking and desiring an authentic experience of the divine. And the sadness, of course, is that the contemporary church is not supplying this. Is not supplying. No. So is it any wonder that, you know, and of course, this is the other thing, is that the you know, people will say, oh, you know, 18 million went to the World Youth Day. That means the church is alive. No, because wherever those young people came from, there were empty places that they left behind.
Right. Churches were vacant because they weren't there. It wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like they left a full parish behind. You know, it's like, you know, and the other thing is, just today, you know, I would be remiss as a Franciscan not to share the wonderful feast day that we have as Franciscans, being St. Clare, the founders of the Poor Clares, the second order of our Franciscan order, and how awesome she is of a saint. And I don't know if you have a seraphic missal or if you've ever read one, but there's a preface, a special preface for St. Clare, and it is beautiful. I should have read it prior to the Mass, because I actually got emotional during it, because it touches on so much connected to our Blessed Mother, and I'm like, oh, this preface is getting me all. I mean, it's a powerful preface, but St. Clare is amazing. Like she's one of the top saints. She is, because one, she like kept St. Francis in line, and she's often depicted holding a monstrance, a defender of the Eucharist, and that's just something that I found very powerful with contrasting to the World Youth Day, is that there's how many St. Clares probably attended the World Youth Day, or I don't know if you saw that interview with Dr. Taylor Marshall, that young girl that was one of the kneelers. She was one of the girls kneeling in the image, and she got on with Dr. Taylor Marshall for a little bit on one of his shows. And I mean, she had that zeal, she had that faith, she understood. So there's not, it's not all doom and gloom. I think we're on the brink of a very good revival of tradition.
Well, except of course the problem is that if she were to try her vocation, now this was again something that we recently had our summer retreat here, and the monastery we went to is down to 3 choir monks. And speaking to one of them, I asked him, Father, when was the last time you had apostolate? And he told me 2 years ago. And he said, and he said he was a lovely young man. He was very bright and educated, but he was very young. So we told him to go away and experience the world, and then come back. And in my head, I didn't say this to him, but in my head, I said he won't come back. He won't come back, and he won't come back for 2 reasons. One, because he will take this as a rejection. He will take this as a rejection. So forever, in his mind, that monastery now, they didn't like me. They didn't want me. I failed to get in. It doesn't matter which way, it will have negative connotations. He will never get over that. And secondly, is that he will go elsewhere. Now, with any luck, he will try his vocation elsewhere and they will take him in. But the chances are that he will possibly likely get the same sort of reaction elsewhere, and he will be basically thrown to the world. And once he becomes immersed in the world, it will be very difficult for him to again withdraw himself enough to try a vocation again. And this has been a persistent policy, a blanket kind of persistent policy across religious and seminarial applications for the last 40, 50 years, where devout, sincere, genuine young vocations, like the girl you're talking about, like those I saw interviewed at World Youth Day, will more than likely be told, no, you're too young. You must go and experience life. You must go and, experience the world before coming here. And it kills vocations. It kills vocations. Much better, surely, as in the old days, to try vocations young, and if somebody, if the vocation turns out to be wrong, they're still young enough to be able to, start a career doing something else. Much better, surely, that they should spend a year or 2 years within a religious atmosphere, at least trying a vocation, and before going, into the world, because that experience itself will set them up, as for a young person. And in the old days, and I can't remember if I read this or whether I heard it. I think it was an old Mother Superior who was saying that they used to get a lot of vocations from the school associated with the convent. And she said, at least, a third of leaving age girls would apply to the convent. And she said, and usually we retained 2/3 of that third.
Yeah.
So in other words, they maybe lose a third. So, of that group of girls in postulancy and novitiate, perhaps a third would be lost. In other words, would try the vocation, realize it wasn't for them, and go on their way, or be told, "No, this isn't for you." But on the whole, she said we'd retain 2/3 of an intake who would go on to simple vows and then solemn profession. And as she said, but while they were here, even those failed vocations, as it were, while they were here, they were in a religious atmosphere, they were in a spiritual atmosphere, they had mass every day, they had frequent confession, they were taught self-discipline, as well as a sense of communal discipline. They were taught responsibility, duty, how to behave and conduct themselves. They were taught manners. They were taught, in those days. I mean, if you've ever watched a nun's story, one of the things I love about the film is the attention they pay to the formation of the nuns, and there's one incident where one of the young novices is running down the corridor and she's corrected, and the novice mistress says, no, we always walk against the wall, and we walk demurely with our eyes cast down, etc. And old-fashioned things like custody of the eyes, and things like that, all of which would stand any girl in good stead who then, okay, religious life not for her, she goes off into the world, but she'll have developed those skills and abilities and had that experience. And it's not as if, and this is the other thing, the people, if somebody tries a vocation, it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that they haven't got faith. It doesn't mean they need to lose their faith. It doesn't mean to say they have to leave the church. It just means that particular path was not for them. But so often people think it's a make or break situation. If I don't make it as doing this, then that's it. But the truth is, no, it's trying a path, a particular path of discernment, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. Doesn't mean it's the end of the road. Doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It just means that particular path wasn't the right path for you. But it doesn't mean to say that the next seminary might not be, or the next monastery or convent might not be. But imagine imagine over the last 40 and 50 years, how many potential vocations have been lost to the world. With this worldly thinking that these young people need to go out and live a little, and experience.
Well, look at what the priests are doing and the religious. I mean, heck, they're even going out and living a little. I mean, we see everything going on. I mean, yeah. But I do like to think, even with all the craziness going on, the interesting times we are in, I do get some great solace. Just having that just random conversation last night with this young girl, young woman. She's only a few years younger than me, so she's really a young woman. But
now I think there's huge potential for hope, and especially for the present generation. Now, on the one hand, we might otherwise think that this is the most lost generation since Noah, but actually, so distant now and remote is the background, as it were, or ancestral knowledge of the faith, that young people now will come to it afresh. They come to it new. Most of them, don't even know what a nativity play means. Most of them, so there's an opportunity to explain everything anew again.
It's interesting.
There's a great
because
evangelization.
because I know we've talked in the past about the revolutionary aspect of the modernism, and the Vatican II, and the French Revolution and all that, American Revolution, so on and so forth. But I think maybe off camera, you and I can discuss further on this, because it brings a great opportunity. Is we are so disconnected from the actual events of Vatican II that the ancestral disconnect, you almost just could start just like brand new without any type of revolution or resentment or negativity attached to it. You just start teaching the faith. Because these young generations, they're so spongy. Like,
yeah.
You really could, that's interesting.
Yeah, I really don't think there's any point anymore in thinking that we have to begin by explaining the difference between pre-Vatican II and post-Vatican II. The knowledge, the appreciation of that is just not there anymore. So now we can just begin square one with the traditional faith, with the traditional presentation. Now, if they go off and they discover, by themselves, they'll come back to you and say, well, Father, I've
didn't answer questions as appropriately.
Thing called the Novus.
But just
that.
Yeah,
exactly.
But just give them the Baltimore Catechism or the Penny Catechism or the Council of Trent. Just start teaching it. Wow, it could be on sometimes. But anyway,
absolutely. There really is. In many ways, there's a blank canvas at the present time, because that residual knowledge about Christianity just isn't there anymore. And even for the majority of cultural Catholics, it's not there anymore. I don't know how many times I've met somebody who says, I'm a Catholic, but then don't understand the significance of the Succetto or the cassock, or sort of what you and I would consider sort of basic stuff that any
Seven Sacraments, 10 Commandments, Our Father, Hail Mary, Glory be, Apostles' Creed.
Because after First Communion classes, if there was a First Communion class, they don't go anymore, so they don't know anything.
Or confirmation, the great graduation from Catholic Church. Mom confirmed. See you at my funeral or wedding.
Yeah, but it's like, but how many of a confirmation? How many of a First Communion class end up being confirmed these days?
Probably under a fourth.
Yeah. This is the problem. And again, part of the problem, revocations, is people are being ordained now because the church is so desperate. People are being ordained now who really their idea, their perception of vocation is social work.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this. You've met supposed priests, who couldn't have this sort of conversation at all.
No, and and it's interesting because their burnout is far different than my burnout or your burnout. Our burnout is more of a spiritual burnout, and not to say it's because we're in constant spiritual battle. We're in spiritual warfare. We understand what it is to be a priest and the battle that we're ensuing on, and what we're doing for souls. The salvation of souls, where the modern priest, their vocation and mission statement is to help mankind. It is. I have to be a social activist. I have to go out in my community and like you get the Father Flaggers in Chicago. You got to go stop this gun violence. You got to stop these shooting. Well, okay, go stand in front of the bullets then, Father, please. Like, come on. What are you doing? You're not saving souls. You're not even saving bodies anymore. You're just a loud-mouthed idiot. And I have no problem saying that. And if he wants to argue with me or, go toe-to-toe with me, you know where to fight me, Father.
Yeah, I read the other day, I read this week, a 35-year-old priest, God rest his soul, who took his own life and left a note and basically was burned out.
Yeah.
But how was he burned out? Well, he was burned out by thinking that his ministry was about social work.
Yeah.
And piling and piling and piling upon himself frustration and disappointment, not being able to help people as well as he thought that he should be able to, or various agencies of the state and institutions should do, and so on and so forth. Now, one of the things that our Lord himself said was, and I have a great heart for the homeless, but one of the things our Lord himself said, you will always have the poor. You will always have the poor.
Yeah.
There will always be people who are poor. There will always be people who are, however they become poor, is neither here nor there. But you will always have the poor, Jesus said. You will always have the poor. It's not up to us. It's not up to parochial clergy to eliminate homelessness from their parish, or to eliminate violent crime, or to all these wonderful sounding things, but it's not our responsibility. However, just this past week, of course, we celebrated the feast of Saint Jean Vianney, the Curé d'Ars, and what did Jean Vianney do? He focused on the spiritual battle,
right?
When deliberately to seek and to save souls. He saved them from themselves. He saved them from alcoholism. He saved them from promiscuity. He saved them from dances. He saved them from excesses, etc., and brought them to a sense of themselves as children of God. And in doing that, he converted thousands of souls. Now,
and made hundreds and thousands of saints. It's amazing because, I love Saint John Vianney. He's one of my go-to saints for my priest, as he should be. Even though I'm not a parish priest, I'm a missionary priest, but nonetheless, I mean, it's just everything about Saint John Vianney is amazing. And I know you have a special devotion to him. But that's what priests need to be. We need to be in the confessional. We need to be available for just souls. It's when you understand what the priesthood is and how you're supposed to do it, is the most challenging thing in the world to do. But yet it's the most rewarding, because every time I'm at Mass, every time I'm offering a holy sacrifice, every time I'm praying my offices, every time I'm praying a rosary, anytime I'm just praying, good days and bad days, you're reminded it's not for me, it's for salvation of souls. I'm not doing this because I like wearing a habit, or I like wearing pretty vestments, or I like, I can say Latin, or or read the Psalms and pray the Psalms. It's like, no, because I love and care so much for the salvation of souls. And I'm willing to struggle in fear and trembling, as St. Paul says, for the salvation of souls.
You see, all that social action and social work and community stuff, as you know, I mean, I'm a great advocate.
But it works itself out. It will work itself out if the priest is being a priest in the parish.
But it's not for the priest. It's for the faithful. It's the faithful that should be helping the homeless. It's the faithful that should be addressing violent crime in their community. It's the faithful that should be, seeking to help the narcotics and the alcoholics and the other addicts.
Exactly.
That's not for the priest to do.
And that's all I'm saying. If the priest was doing what the priest is supposed to be doing in the parish, the faithful would be going out and doing the ministry, the corporal and spiritual works of mercy.
Exactly.
Sorry, I think we broke up a little bit there. Sorry.
But that's exactly the point, and that's what the old Roman apostolate is all about. That's if you go to celsi.org, and you can find there various articles I've written in the last few months about what the old Roman apostolate is about, and of course social action is a focus, but it's something that all of us, the faithful, Christian faithful, should be about. Everyone should be doing that. Our problem and our mission, our problem is trying to supply enough priests for people to be able to receive the sacraments.
Right.
That's our side of the bargain. But the other side, the communal fellowship, societal aspect of a Christian community or of an extended family is down to the faithful. It's down to the faithful to create and to engender. And it's down
You
to
don't need consecrated hands to feed hungry souls.
Exactly. That's the thing, going back to the beginning, what we were saying, hands that have been consecrated for the sacraments. But you don't need consecrated hands to feed, clothe, minister to, and look out for other people. You don't, and yet those are the things, remember, that our Lord will ask on the day of judgment. Where were you when I was hungry? Where were you when I was naked? Where were you when I was sick? Where were you when I was in prison? Where were you when I was a stranger?
Yeah.
We all need to be conscious of that. I'm not excusing priests from having, a consciousness about that, but it's something for all the faithful to be involved with. And that would be the way, that would be the correct way to harness the energy of today's young people. Give them a real cause. Give them a real campaign where they would see benefit and fruit.
Because look what's going on today. How many young people don't have a sense of identity? And the world is trying to confuse them with all this mumbo jumbo of gender fluidity, and the young people just want to have a sense of identity. They want to know who they are. They know they were created. They know there's something larger than themselves, because all humans know that.
Exactly.
And they're struggling to figure it out. And they're just. And I think we're onto something here, Your Grace.
I was in a conversation with a scientist in France last week, and we were talking about the creation and how things came to be, and talking about intelligent design and so on and so forth. And he had wonderful answers about evolution and so on and so forth. But where I clinched it, as it were, in our discussion was, I said, okay, so I said, let's just say that you and Dawkins and Hawkins are right. That all these things just happen because, and blah 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 blah. Why then? What then is love? Are you really content to say that love is just chemical responses and reactions to this, that, and everything else? And what is the purpose? And I said, don't you feel that you have a sense of purpose, that there's a reason for your existence? Is it really just that you are a bag of cells that are, has evolved after centuries and centuries and centuries of previous cells, and that's why you're here? How is it that you're able, to rationalize outside the experience of your experience? How is it you're able to have an imagination? How is it you're able to think and conceive of things that you will never experience? You don't need to go to the North Pole to know that it's cold there. So and the answer, of course, to all of that is God. The reason why we are spiritual, why we as souls have a sense of purpose about ourselves, or lack of purpose, is because there is this other part to us that, yes, is of course integral to our material existence, complements our material existence, but clearly is able to manipulate and direct and override our material existence. So that we make decisions about what we eat and what we do and how we act and what we say and how we behave and blah blah blah, which all speaks to a purpose. There must be a reason. There's a purpose. And this is, for me, the great sadness. And as I'm big on vocational discernment. And vocational discernment, I truly believe, needs to begin with children, you know, when they are at the youngest, and discern skills, gifts, talents, and abilities through their childhood that then can be honed in on and disciplined and formed for fulfilling adult life. You know, because we're not all gifted musicians, we're not all scientists, we're not all cooks, we're not all this, that, everything else. We're all blessed differently, you know. But how many times have we met people who have later in life discovered what their skill, talent, and gift and ability is, or have had a skill, talent, and ability, but have squandered it?
Yeah.
You know, it's and all because of this, because of lack of discernment. And yet our churches, our church families should be places in which every single individual is encouraged and enabled to discern what God's purpose for their life is. And their, you know, their gifts, skills, talents, and abilities, their innate predispositions, etc. These are all clues as to what God may, you know, want us to achieve with our lives. And it's true that the only real fulfillment in this life is when we marry ourselves to God's will and realize it. And that's what we see in Our Lady. You know, she was perfectly attuned for what God wanted of her. And that's why she fulfilled what his purpose for her was. And thank God for it, because we have our salvation.
And for any of our viewers who are discerning or are in difficulty with trying to figure all this out, your vocation, point in life, anything like that, I direct you to a wonderful chaplet to help you figure things out. It's the chaplet of Our Lady's Sorrows, the Seven Dolos of Our Lady. That is the best chaplet to pray when you're trying to figure out these hard questions and you're trying to find the answers to these hard questions. Discernment is not for the light-hearted. You need to actually go in, you know, ready to figure this out and get dirty spiritually, mentally. It's a lot of work. And Our Lady of Seven Sorrows chaplet is a good start. It's something that has helped me greatly in my vocation. Every day I'm discerning my vocation. You know, as Bishop Kelly, I think, said many moons ago, you know, every day we get up and we discern our vocation. Every day we are turning towards God. We're turning away from God. And that's a vocation for saying yes. And Seven Sorrows chaplet is a great start. And Our Lady of Sorrows will help you. She will not leave you an orphan. You won't get it in one. And if you do, please let us know, because there's something miraculous going on. It's going to take time. You may have to pray a few chaplets. You may have to, you know, be patient. But that is a great start. And just to leave our viewers with something to get them assisted in discerning and figuring out, navigating these interesting times.
Absolutely. Well, that does bring us to the end of our time this week.
Oh, wow.
Hopefully we'll be with you in 2 weeks' time.
I hope so.
Apologies for 2 weeks ago. It just transpired that none of us were available. But nonetheless, we replayed one of our most watched episodes on Traditionis Custodes, and again hit high in appreciation for that episode. But yeah, hopefully we'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Meanwhile, I shall impart a blessing and we'll go on our way. Dominus vobiscum.
Et cum spiritu tuo.
Ordemus. Ave Maria, gratia plena Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Pater noster, qui es in celis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum, qui erat in nobis Domini, et dimitti nobis debita nostra, sicut nos dimittimus debitoribus nobis, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed liber nos a malo. Amen.
Sit nomen Domini benedictum,
Et hoc nunc et in saeculorum,
adiutorium nostrum in nomine Domini,
qui fecit caelum et terram,
benedictio Dei omnipotentis, Patri et Filii et Spiritus Sancti descendat super vos, et maneat semper. Amen.
Amen.
God bless you all. Thank you for watching. It's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.
And in 2 weeks' time, we'll see you again. Take care.